So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight marks a very special occasion there. We are joined by some fabulous young people who will be participating in our second forum, which is Together with Young People. So of course, just a few housekeepings. If you're not talking, please keep your microphone on mute. If you have a question, please feel free to use the chat box or raise your hand. And of course, just a reminder for those who just recently joined in that the session will be recorded for funding and evaluation purposes. So please feel free to turn off your camera if you do not want to be recorded. Before I sort of really jump in to our session tonight there, I just want to recognise that the sovereignty held by our Indigenous people as the traditional custodians of the land, that MiCare, in partnership with the African Women's and Families Network, the Burundian Cultural Ladies of Victoria, Fijian Community Association Victoria, and Southeast Somali. So we recognise the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first Australians. We recognise their culture, history, diversity, and deep connection to our land. We pay our respects to both elders past, present, and emerging of the Wathaurong, Bunurong, and Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation from where we are now meeting today, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So thank you tonight for joining us. We shine the light on young people, where we have got a fantastic lineup of speakers that will be engaging us in conversations on respectful relationships, gender equality, and what the future holds for them as individuals and as a community. Please join me in welcoming our diverse group of young people. And Sylvia, I will now hand it over to you to introduce our first guest speaker.
Thank you, Sarah. Bulavinaka and namaste, everyone. I would like to introduce to you our first speaker, Ms. Charlene Prasad. She has an interest in protecting, educating, and enforcing the rights of individuals to make a positive difference in their lives. From a young age, she has also had a passion in working with her local community. And during the week, she is a practicing lawyer and works in personal injury law, fighting for justice for our local people. And on the weekends, she works in customer service at a local swimming pool. When she's not working, she loves to spend her time at the gym. Charlene, hopefully that's working out at the gym and not taking selfies. She has taken on many volunteering roles throughout the years, including providing legal advice at a community center for her night service, tutored young refugee and migrant students through the Center for Multicultural Youth, and taught English to new migrants with AMES. She was awarded the Brimbank Young Citizen of the Year in 2012 and the Gorton Young Leaders Award in 2011 in recognition for her commitment to public service and contribution to her local community. Please join me to welcome Ms. Charlene Prasad.
Thank you, Sylvia, for the introduction and for inviting me to speak on this panel today. And thank you to all the wonderful groups and the other speakers who are also present tonight to be able to share their stories and their views on many different values and ideas. Firstly, when I think of a respectful relationship, I see trust and honesty, understanding, support and appreciation, equality and comfort. In every relationship, there are two people who are different in their own ways, and sometimes there may be disagreements, but respect is being able to understand and be open to different views. In a similar way, people may have different interests or hobbies with our partners, but respect, again, is about respecting our differences. As a young, independent woman, I have never been a people pleaser in the sense that I do not believe we need to change ourselves for someone else, and we should never feel pressured to do anything that we don't wish to do. One of the most important values that I embrace in a respectful relationship is equality. So I don't believe that there is a distinction between a man's role and a woman's role, or what a man can do and a woman cannot do. I'm also a very strong believer on decisions being made together and not on behalf of myself or anyone else. Now, I come from a background where I was born and raised in Australia, but my parents were born and raised in Fiji. They lived a very different lifestyle. Their culture, the traditions were very different to our Western society and today's generation. And young people in particular may not agree with the traditions expected upon them, or they may not have an understanding of it. I have always been raised to appreciate and to show appreciation for elders, as they have a lifetime of experience with a lot to offer. And in many cases, have in fact been the ones who have guided us through our lives and given us opportunities that were not available to them. What we may not agree with, particularly with what our parents have expected upon us, is something, again, that we need to be mindful of, that people are different and they have different views. What my parents were taught by their parents, they may not necessarily enforce that upon us. And likewise, when I have children in the future, I may not teach them, or I may have different teachings on them. And then the cycle continues to go on with their children. We all want to feel valued, confident, supported, and know that we can express ourselves without any judgment. When my dad had surgery, I was out mowing the lawn. I lift weights at the gym, and I don't have to go in the women's only area to do that, to feel comfortable. I have male and female friends that come over and we socialise together as a group. There's no women all in the kitchen and men outside drinking. We can all do that together. Where there is no respect, not only do we not feel these sorts of values, but it can affect our well-being and our mental health, and it can create a situation where there's conflict and we may feel unsafe. So to share a bit of a personal story here, prior to practicing as a lawyer, I worked for the state government in investigations and prosecution because I had a very keen interest in criminal law at the time. And when I was put in this position, I was a young girl and I was put into a team with all mature-aged men. I was the only female, and at first this didn't particularly bother me. And I was excited and I was really eager and performing quite well in my role. As time went on, things became a lot worse. My colleagues would start asking me out for lunch. And again, just to mention, these were mature-aged men, almost double my age at the time, asking me out on lunch, making inappropriate comments and sexist jokes about me being a female or a young girl at the time. All my ideas and my work at the time was being sent up to the management level with other people's names on it, and my name was removed from there. I was never allowed to speak at team meetings or voice my views and my opinions. I was sent out on jobs in regional areas on my own where there was no phone reception, and I was forced to stay in hotels where I was scared to actually leave the room. At this particular time in my life, I was made to feel quite inferior. I felt controlled, and again, being the only female in the group, I had nobody to speak up to at the time. Time went on, I did put up with it, but it did get to a point where I was sitting in the car and crying every morning because I didn't want to go to work. At the same time, I didn't want to leave the job because it was a full-time job for me. In the end, I decided to stand up for myself, and I walked in one morning, handed in my resignation, and I walked out. I had no job to go to, and it did take me a couple of months to actually go and find another job at the time, so I was unemployed. But when I reflect back on it now, it is probably one of the best decisions that I have ever made because it's made me into a stronger woman today. So putting all of this together, working in a man's world, as I call it, has encouraged me to be a role model for young women, to praise and encourage them to stand up for themselves and have equal power to make decisions and progress in life. My goal at this point in time is to become a partner of a law firm one day, and I know that I'm now in a position where that is possible for me. We deserve to be our own person, to be appreciated, and to not be in the shadows of any man or woman or any other person. We're individuals in our own right. And for me, in my opinion, I do see gender stereotypes and inequality as a mindset. It's an attitude that we follow because of what the rest of society expects or has put into our minds. If a girl wants to play football or be a tradie, if a male cooks dinner and does the washing, if a female's out mowing the lawn, admiration is the attitude that we need to have towards these things. And we do need to fight for this now and into the future. I know for myself that when I do get married next year and I do have my own house, my partner and I will be doing things together. We'll be sharing all of the duties because regardless of us being a man or a woman, we're equal. And the level of respect that we deserve to show each other needs to be the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlene. Like, that was such a great sort of like introduction to our forum there. I really love the fact that you decided, despite against the odds, you handed in your resume and stuck up for yourself there. Like, I think that's such an important lesson for lots of young people there. And that also, like, you know, you were able to set your boundaries, you know, at work there, despite, you know, dealing with these people there and feeling that, wow, you know, you are more than twice my age, but still you're showing me such disrespect there, not just as like, you know, a young person, but most importantly, like, you know, as a female, which shouldn't happen. And, you know, we're really happy to have you with us tonight there and have you share such powerful insight. Thanks so much there. You know, definitely, I hope that lots of other young people will hear your story and feel inspired or feel that they can also take action there if they are in that situation. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Anybody else have some comments for Charlene tonight? Sylvia?
Thank you, Charlene. I know you have to go soon, but thank you so much for, you know, that for you to, you know, say your personal story on Zoom for us to hear. And I didn't expect that, but thank you so much because I was going, OMG. so thank you so much. I really appreciate you being brave here today to tell us about the journey and how you, you know, how you came through it all. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks once again, Charlene. Like, you know, such a powerful and moving story there. And definitely we look forward to potentially seeing you at many, many more of our forums like this there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No worries. So the next person I'd probably like to call on is like Lillian to introduce her guest speaker for tonight there. Lillian?
Hello. Let me introduce Chris Naonyiri. Chris Naonyiri, actually, I will let him talk more about himself. What I should say, Chris is my firstborn son. That's what I can say. I think I will let him introduce himself and tell about what he does, and then he can go on with his speech today.
No worries. Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Naonyiri, as my mom just said there. And again, thank you, Charlene, for sharing your story. It was very the vulnerability. We really do appreciate it. And again, it's always good I love to hear a real life anecdotal story because I think it puts things into perspective, you know, in a different way that statistics does. You know, hearing someone's story is really powerful. So I appreciate that. In terms of how I look at respect and equality, I didn't prepare as nicely, you know, as maybe some others have, but I thought I'd take a few notes. It's funny for me. I actually was kind of posed this question recently, a couple of weeks ago, talking to a friend, and she was saying how she was discussing respect with another friend, and she asked, "What does respect mean to you?" And I was stumped. I really didn't know how do I describe what exactly is respect, you know, because we kind of know how we feel and what do we want to feel when it comes to respect, but in terms of how do I explain it now, it's a bit tricky. So I sat down and had a little bit of a think about it, and the things I came up with was more to do with just, it kind of kept coming back to this idea of having a safe space. Respect is something that, you know, when there's a relationship where respect is present, it creates a space where everyone involved feels like they can be free to be themselves, to express themselves and not be judged, and not be shunned or pushed away because they are valued and appreciated. So some of the things I wrote down, for example, I was writing down that when I think of a respectful relationship, to me, it's one where every person's individual value is consciously acknowledged. We're aware of everyone's value. Everyone's effort is appreciated. A respectful relationship is one where we seek to understand others. And I think that's really important for me personally. I love being in an environment where the main thing in any discussion, whether it's a debate or just a general discussion, is that we want to understand people, because I feel like that's where growth really comes from it. And, just everyone seeks to kind of allow others to be themselves, and that I think that ties in really well with equality as well. When you value someone else and you understand that their value as a human is equal to yours, regardless of sex, gender, orientation, things like that, that's when we can really grow and understand other people. And then as we understand, we realize, okay, this is what that person needs to feel respected and to feel safe in this environment. And then you can provide that better, and with that as well, that kind of leads to a more productive community, because when we feel safe to express ourselves, we can share the ideas that maybe before we couldn't feel like we could share before, and so we get more forward thinkers. People are more open to putting forward, things that maybe push the boundaries a bit, but maybe we do need as a community. So I think that's really valuable when it comes to respect and equality. And one of the questions that was posed as well was, respect in terms of elders and young people. And I think, whenever you're young, growing up, you think that you know a lot. And then as you get older, you realize, oh no. And like every few years, you kind of hit this realization, oh, wow, I didn't know that much before. And every year you just get more and more and more. And so I think respect for young and elders is kind of a cycle. I don't see it as starting one place and ending somewhere else. It's kind of a continuous cycle because, as you grow, we're taught what respect is, but then it comes back, into like how we show respect to our parents, and our parents see that, and then they will kind of show back, and it keeps on going, and then with our children and continuously as well. And so I would say when it comes to youngers and elders, I think respect is just something that is, it's a two-way street. When we feel respected, we're more open to showing respect. So as young people, when we feel like we're being listened to, again, the whole safe space idea, when we feel like we've been given a safe space by our parents, then we can kind of put forward how we feel, and they can kind of show us how to navigate through those situations. And then, we can feel more open to show respect to them as well, because we understand, wow, our parents know this, or our elders know this, and kind of, shows us a lot. So I think, I would say overall for communities and how it would benefit with equality as well, I think they really go hand in hand. You can't have equal rights or equal opportunities without first respecting the other people that we're dealing with in the community. And I think we still, we do have a way to go to reach there, but I really feel like we're getting somewhere, especially with conversations like this. And again, thanks to you guys, who've set this up. This is really good. I wasn't expecting to be here, but, my mom said, oh, can you please just jump on? And I said, yeah, no worries. Let's see. I'm sure I could take something from it. Hopefully I can share my perspective as well. But yeah, things like this is really what helps to open our minds up, and the grassroots level, so that when we each go out into our own communities, we can go with a little bit of more insight from someone else, and, be a bit more proactive in respecting others and sharing that respect, so that it comes again in that cycle and we all feel safer, to, have a more progressive and productive community. So that's what I'd have to say on respect and equality. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer a few of them, or, any kind of experiences you want to know about. But yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Chris, for sharing. It's quite great. But what do you maintain the audience? How old you are and what do you do? Oh,
yeah. Sorry, I missed that. That was the first thing I was supposed to talk about. I am 22 at the moment. I'm a student. I'm studying psychology. At the University of Auckland here in New Zealand. And so I did live in Melbourne for 6 years. My family's still over in Melbourne. So I'd say I'm still part of the community. And once I'm done, I'll probably head right back over there. So I do still feel quite a part of the Melbourne community as well, and Australian in general, So yeah, that's what I'm up to at the moment.
Thank you, Chris. Definitely, again, such insightful words, and especially coming from yourself there. I mean, of course, I'd say kudos to Lillian as well for raising such a young gentleman, but definitely I think it's really important, and having you here is a great example of young people sort of being more involved in the conversation about respect there, because even like, just the topic itself there is something that is such difficult to navigate there, especially with all the media representation that's going on at the moment there, especially concerning like respectful relationships there. So definitely, like, we're very pleased to have you here today. And I should, like, thank Lillian for asking you to come along there. Does anybody have any questions for Chris? Davis, I believe you had your hand up, and Hillary as well. So.
Right. Hey, thank you very much for inviting me and having this opportunity. And Chris, thank you very much for coming out there. And I just wish we had very many other people like Chris. This will be far, far better. Now, Chris, a question for you. For you, respect, which space do you learn from respect first? Is that school, is that peers, or at home? Because when we understand your cornerstone or what inspires you to have respect on giving, we would understand on how to approach other young people like you to make this a better society in the future. Thank you, Chris.
No worries, no worries. Thank you for your question. That's a great question on respect. I think it starts, as with most kind of values and principles that we get as we grow up, it definitely starts in the home. And depending on how your home environment is set up, some people, we've been raised in a house where right from the beginning, we have different people, aunties, uncles, or family friends right there helping you grow as well. So it's not just your direct family. Sometimes it's other people as well, grandparents and things like that, teaching you what they've learned throughout the different generations. So I would say it starts there. But even in saying that, I think we learn different ways to respect people as we grow through different stages of life. So I'm sure we can all relate. The way we view our parents or our siblings and the respect we show, our dynamic is never the same between different, people, whether it's our friends from school, co-workers, siblings, cousins, parents. It's a little bit different, and we understand the dynamics that is allowed and what is a bit of, what is respectful and what's disrespectful based on that relationship. And so we learn, the family kind of levels of relationship in the home, and that foundational relationship kind of, we take that into into school, I'd say maybe into school, and then in school, friends and stuff like that, or teachers. And then we learn a bit more about respecting people who you don't know too much about, or their cultures. And different cultures have different levels, different ways of showing respect. And so I think it's a never-ending journey, I think. And so as you start to meet different people, if I was to travel to another country I hadn't been to before, I'd understand, oh, this is how they show respect. But if you're asking from the beginning, the foundational level, I would say it starts with the family, and how you observe it, growing up in your early years. That's what I would think, yeah.
Okay, just one follow-through question.
Yeah.
You said that you are a student of psychology.
Yes.
I think we would be a very, very good resource in contributing to literature and content, designing small programs that actually enriches other young men like you.
Yeah.
All right.
That'd
Thank
be
you very
amazing.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hillary, you had a question?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris, for your presentation. I have just a very, very short question.
No.
You are in New Zealand, yeah?
Yes, I am.
And your parents are in Melbourne?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. So my question is, you have your own timetable. You have activities you attend, and your parents are not around. So now, if it happens that your parents, tell you, Chris, you have to do this, but to do that, but you have a party with your friends and things like that, and also referring to the African, especially Burundian, cultural background. How do you navigate around that? How do you navigate around respecting what your parents tell you? Don't go see Louise or Godbert or whoever, or Teresa, but then and then you feel like no, I'm in New Zealand, I'm alone, I have to go there, I have to, these are my friends. How do you navigate around that?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's a bit different being right in the presence of your family and stuff, whereas when you have the distance of living somewhere else, some people like to take that and run with it, and they'll just say, you know what, they're not around, I can do whatever I want. you know, they can't tell me anything because I'm just going to go and do whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you can guess, that's not really the best way to show respect. I think for me, part of respect in that sense is just clear communication. And it's a struggle. I wouldn't say that I'm perfect at it. You know, sometimes I'm not the greatest at it. And sometimes I don't really want to talk about some things that I just want to go and do it. I'll explain later,
yeah.
you know, but as we all have moments as well. But in general, I would say the best thing to do in that situation to show respect and to kind of nurture it is to ensure that we have communication between our parents.
Yeah.
So if I do have something planned beforehand, I can, you know, tell my mom, oh, you want me to go do this? That's wonderful. And then kind of weigh up what is a priority in the situation? What is she asking me to do? How much does it mean to her? You know, if I decide to go through with it or push it to the side, what's that going to do? How's she going to feel about it? Will she feel respected? Do I feel like I'm showing respect through doing that? And also at the same time thinking, okay, if I weigh up the options, can we maybe come to a compromise? So if she's asked me to do something on a particular day, but I have a plan, I can ask, oh, is it all right if I do it a bit earlier maybe? Or can I do it a bit later? What works for you? And yeah, so that kind of centers around communication and making sure that we're on the same page. And so even if we reach a point, which something that I think Charlene said before, which I really agreed with and I really valued, was that it's not always about agreeing with the person. Sometimes you don't come to an agreement in certain discussions. But I think when we do have an understanding that I'm trying to understand your perspective and trying to show you that I care about what you're telling me, even if we don't agree on how things are done, at least we can both see we're putting in the effort, and we do respect each other's opinions and stuff like that. And so going forward, it's not a tense situation because we know we can come back to it again and still communicate based on the way we've communicated beforehand. So, like I said, I'm not perfect, even though I'm saying these things. I'm very, you know, it's a learning process.
I understand.
Process. You know, as you grow, like, as I'm sure we all know, you know, growing up, if we've been blessed enough to be around our parents as we grow up, you know, through different age groups, you start to want to become more independent and do your own thing. And it's a bit of a challenge. But over time, you navigate it. And I think a lot of relationships just really do benefit more from open, honest communication. So I think that's what really helps in those situations.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Definitely a pleasure to have you. And I was just saying to Lillian, oh, you know, we should, like, you know, have Chris all the time, like, you know, when we have people.
Thank you.
Teresa, did you have a question?
Just want to make a comment about what Chris said, that respective communication, and I think that's the way how you respond, how you answer back, plus including the body language. So what I think respective positive communication is very important, whether it is within the young people, older people, and also within the gender and equality. That's just my comment. That's all.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks, Teresa.
I have had my hands up for some time.
Oh, sorry, Apollo. I saw that. Sorry, my apologies. And then Marie-Louise also has a hand up too. So Apollo will come to you. Chris, Apollo would like to ask you a question.
Go ahead. Yeah, no problem.
Well, Chris, thank you for your excellent contribution. I am going to share an observation and allow you to comment. You may have seen an advertisement which talks about the generation levels. Those born in the 80s, the way they talk and they communicate. Those born in 90s, those born in 2000. And when you see that, have you seen that kind of advertisement?
I don't know if I've seen, is it a specific advert?
What happens is that a child comes from school and then the mom says, oh, would you help me with this? And then he says, those ones in the 80s would say, oh, yes, mom, let me finish this. I'm going to come and help you. Those ones in the 90s, we say, oh, mom again. Whenever I come from school, you tell me to do this. Those in the 90s, they not even answer, they ignore and they throw tantrums and the rest. But the point I'm making here, without being too much detailed, is the attitude versus rights and freedoms. The point here is that people tend to think that when they are growing and growing in a country like Australia, they have rights to defend. They need to be more assertive. My comment to you, to ask you, is to navigate between being assertive and being respectful in the way you actually defend, because they all tell you you've got to be an individual, assertive, and defend yourself. In other words, you find a way of always communicating in a way that provokes rather than builds relationships. Is that I would like you to see how you navigate respective relationship in that kind of antagonistic environment. You are pushed to answer in a way.
Right. Thank you for that question. Thank you. I think I would say that's a very loaded and broad question. There's a lot to unpack in that kind of question, because yeah, I guess what I'll say with that is, in terms of, like, as generations change, people change, and we look at one and we'll say, oh, they're behaving like this or like that. There's different ways to look at it, because you can look at it being assertive and defensive from the aspect of the parent or from the aspect of the child. And I think one thing that is really important is just asking, how are we raising the kids as well, So like I said, when it comes to respect, it's a two-way street, right? And so how we learn how to respect others comes from how we see our parents respect us, and not just us as well. It's really important to remember that kids see whatever's going on in the house, So if I'm seeing my mom talk to her friend, I'm seeing my mom talk to her partner or anything like that, that also teaches us too. So it's a tricky one to understand, because we're all trying to cross different generations and communicate at the same time. But I think I don't have all the answers for that, but I think it starts from instilling the correct values from a young age, so that as the kid grows, or if they start to respond in a way where it's being a bit too assertive and this and that, we also need to understand, when is it right to use that kind of assertiveness, and that's tricky to teach, but it's something that will need to be taught as well as time goes on. Because we do want our kids to be able to stand up for themselves, and we want our kids to be able to go out into the workforce and say, this is fair, this is not fair, I deserve this, I work hard for my family, I work hard for my parents. So you want them to have a bit of assertiveness when they go out into that field, but when they come home as well, there needs to be a balance as well, and respect in that sense. So teaching our kids when is the right time to be assertive, when is the time to be a bit more humble and step back, is really important. And I'm only 22, so when I become a parent, I'll let you know how easy or how difficult it is. I have no clue. That's just my perspective so far, growing up. I feel like that's kind of the important part, is instilling the values of understanding when is it time to stand up and say, hey, this is how I feel and this is what I want to do. And when is it time to say, you know what, okay, I'm going to just listen for the time being and do what I'm told, and then we can discuss this later, But yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question in a way.
Yeah, you have, definitely.
Yeah. That's how I see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marie-Louise?
Thank you. Chris, ndagushimiye cyane ku kiganiro uhejeje kugira. Ikibazo ngira nkubaze kiregereye kumbure cyane icyo bahejeje kukubaza.
Oh, my Kirundi is weak. My Kirundi is not the best.
If it
oh,
is
okay.
necessary,
No worries,
translate. Ntacyo bibi. We wavukiye ino uba muri Australia, muri New Zealand, ibihugu byisanzuye mu bintu byo kwigenga. Ku rundi ruhande wavukiye ukurira mu muryango wubahana kandi wiyubashe. Ivyo bintu byo kubaha ntibikubera umutwaro ku bwigenge bwawe nk'umuntu akiri muto afise ibindi byinshi yipfuza gushikako.
Yeah, well, okay, Chris. Louise is asking.
Yeah.
You live in you are in New Zealand. You lived in Australia. You are in both places where freedom is so wide. Now you have parents who come from a background where respect is so important, especially for kids to listen to whatever the parents say. You would say sometimes dictate. So Louise is asking, it is not a burden on your shoulders to what you want to do or to become.
Okay. So just for the last part of what you just said there, in terms of like, what do you mean by a burden? So
is it not? Does it stop you, or does it allow you to do whatever you want to do? You as a person, as Chris, in a modern, country like these ones we live in.
Right. Is it in terms of me living here, my parents living in Australia, or just in general?
In general, you with your parents, yeah. So, is it? How can I put it in English? Yeah. Does it stop you from doing whatever you want to do? You as a young man, to achieve your dreams.
Okay. I see. I would say sometimes yes, for sure, but sometimes we also need to be stopped. We don't always have the correct perspective. As young people, we think we know exactly how we need to navigate the world, and we think we know it better than most people. But sometimes it's also valuable to be told, hey, you need to stop at this point, and maybe I do need to stop at that point. And there's definitely been times where I've said, no, I know what I'm doing, and I've gone forward and I've realized, oh, maybe not. I've actually probably should have listened to my parents in that situation. But there's also been times where my parents have been a bit skeptical, and I've gone through with it, and it's turned out to be quite all right, So it's a bit tricky, but I'd say it has held back in some areas, and some areas I'm glad that it has, because there is value in being able to take advice, and being able to listen to other people and receive feedback. And if we don't grow up in an environment where that's an important thing, sometimes we can go on thinking that we know all the answers, or that we don't need other people's advice, and that can put us in some tricky situations. So in terms of the culture, in our culture, where it's very important to listen and always listen to our parents and our grandparents and what they tell us. I think it can really help you out a lot in times, not just with family, but if you go into certain fields and stuff like that, where you need to be taking advice and feedback, you're more ready to do so because you've been in environments where you're comfortable with authority. You know what it's like to be in a position where you listen to others. And with that as well, I know that in our community as well, we can be quite I don't know how to put it the best way, but we do like to stand strong and be proud of who we are as well. And so in that sense, that also brings the assertiveness. So if we're in an environment where we need to take feedback, but it's a bit unfair, we also should have that ability to say, I respect what you're telling me, and I understand that you want to give me feedback, or this is the direction you want to give me, but at the same time, these are the values that I believe in, and I don't want to shift from that too. So it can be a bit tough in that sense to understand when to use it again. But yeah, sometimes it's not a bad thing to be held back when your parents tell you something, because it can actually save you from trouble later. So that's what I'd say to that question.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you may feel like
Thank you, Chris. Definitely, I think lots of young people would resonate with that particular last comment you made. Obviously, yes, there's a need for us to listen to our parents and to be held back sometimes there. And other times, it is also about sometimes, taking on board their advice there, but still going ahead to pursue what you feel is in your best interest, but then doing so in a way that is still respectful. And again, we really commend you on being here tonight there and sharing these insights, which we do hope that a lot of young people will also resonate with there. And then in the future, when you become a psychologist, then come and talk to you about the family dynamics and so forth there, which we all know, if there's no respect within the family, between young people, between parents, between siblings, then that can escalate to something more it can escalate to potential situations of family violence. So definitely thank you once again.
And if I could just add one last thing as well, to what I was just saying with that question there. I know I've spoken heaps and I feel terrible, but just the last thing I wanted to say as well is, even in the situations where we have been given advice, maybe from elders, parents, family, and stuff like that, and we decide not to take that specific advice, I think it's also important to remember that they still did raise us. So even when we go, if we've been given like a left or go right, and our parents say, listen, you need to go left, and I go right, I'm going right with all the values that I've still been instilled from, you know, when I grew up. And I think that's something that even as kids to remember as well, and as adults to remember, even if our kids take a different path, they're still our children. So they still have the values and the principles that hopefully, you know, you've instilled into us. So it's not all as terrible as we may think it is, but I thought I'd just say that anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's a very important statement to make. I mean, even for myself there, like, you know, the conversations that I would have with my father, who, like, you know, has instilled with me, like, you know, certain values there. And even that they're like, you know, his views on gender can be quite, you know, like traditional and so forth there. So like, you know, on one hand, he would like, you know, his daughter to be a leader, to be someone in the community who is of stature and so forth there. But at the same time, he also wants her to be safe, be quiet, you know, don't make too much like noise and so forth there. And then I recently sort of said to him there, and it sort of resonates with your left and right example, that you didn't raise a daughter to bow down to the patriarchy, to which he quite like, he laughed and acknowledged that actually, you know, maybe like, you know, it is about that respectful relationship, and that like, you know, when I'm challenging him on like, you know, particular gender issues, it's not that I'm being disrespectful there, but I'm actually pointing out, you know, different ways in which his value has been instilled in me. You know, you raised me to be someone who's a leader in the community there. You raised me to fight for like, you know, social justice and to use my position in society to help other people. So actually what I'm doing is what you instilled in me. So, you know, when you tell me like, you know, all these traditional like, you know, gender views, I'm actually just repeating what you've told me in a different context there and still respecting you. So definitely, I really like the left and right example. And again, I think lots of young people, not just here with us tonight there, but like, you know, in the future, when they hear this recording, they can definitely resonate with that example. So thanks very much, Chris, for the wonderful insight. I'd like to actually now move on to Feifei. So Feifei is my guest speaker for tonight, along with Nang. So here we'll hear from Feifei first. So Feifei actually started off here as an international student and has done many, many wonderful things. I met Feifei last year through another mutual, like, you know, contact. And I can say that Feifei is such an amazing young woman. She runs her own community organization called Story as a Connection that helps lots of international students connect with one another there and navigate the precarious journey that is like, you know, of many, many students that come here from overseas there. Feifei is also the program officer for the PACE Women's Leadership Program with the Multicultural Women's Health, in which they help like, you know, refugees and like migrants there of who are women there in terms of like fulfilling like leadership within society there and really encouraging them and empowering them to be the best that they can ever be. So I won't go into too much detail. I'll let Feifei talk more about herself there because I don't think I'm actually doing her any justice. But thank you, Feifei, and welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Well, I think, yeah, respect and also gender equality, I think that's such an important topic to talk about because I think we talk a lot about the respect and we talk a lot about the respect in communication, right? But a lot of you, the guest speakers also talk about listen. I think listen is really important. However, listen can be such a simple word. We all talk about, yeah, I'm listening to you. You know, like now, I'm listening to you like this. That's my phone. And sometimes you're like, yeah, I'm listening to you. I am listening. That's how I'm listening. And sometimes, you know, you saw a couple, especially at the stage of breaking up, and say, you never listen to me. And then, you know, one of them might say, I am listening to you. Tell me now. But that kind of attitude, you've already blocked. You've already blocked. Like, how am I going to tell you? I had actually a lot of times I feel, you know, people ask you, yeah, tell me what? But that kind of tone didn't even give me that kind of respect to really feel, are you really going to listen to me? I guess we talk about listening so much, but don't actually think about what does that mean by listening. And I think we're also all so busy. Things comes from the left ear going out from the right ear. And then if we asked, can you repeat what I just said? A lot of time people cannot recap what has been told, even especially I think online, the online space is also quite interesting because we're being on the screen so much as well. And a lot of times I also feel, it's such a distant way of speaking on the screen as well. And we forget what does that really mean by listening and to respect each other on the digital space. So I think nowadays I would really prefer to use listen deeply and really to think about what listen deeply is like. But can you recap what people just said? Can you really ask people? And not this, I think respect, sometimes we think it's disrespectful if we ask people, sorry, pardon, can you tell me again? A lot of us, we feel like, you must have listened and you shouldn't ask people anything. And even when I was at uni, my teacher was lecturing and I didn't understand a single thing he just said, but he was sort of addressing it in a way to say, this is something you must have learned. So after hearing that, I was like, yeah, better to zip my mouth, because anybody who would raise their hand to ask anything will be seen as stupid. And I still remember after my exams, I was trying to hopefully to get feedback for my exams. And then I went to the room and then my lecturer told me, oh, sorry, I didn't mark your exam, but you can ask him, another lecturer. And I was like, oh, all right, never mind. So I never got a chance to actually ask the feedback for my exam, because that lecturer appeared as someone, if you ask the question, you appear as stupid, not intelligent. So that kind of will prevent me from asking anything. I think in that kind of relationship, you sort of see the pressure from the authority. You don't really see that's someone approachable, and to have to really have the conversations feel like we're on the same level. I think it's in everything. Even we talk about elders and we talk about young people. And again, if we see someone is older or someone is a senior at work, and we would feel it's inappropriate to ask something as well. But often I think, all of us as a human, and we are all the same, doesn't matter which background you have, coming as a migrant, coming as a refugee, whether you are at an executive level or you are cleaning for offices, or even cleaning for hotels and cleaning for motels, cleaning on the street. We are all human, but often I find it's quite difficult to have the conversation to feel like we are on the same level. And I trained myself to actually, a lot of people say, how can you talk to people from different age groups, from different disciplines, and from different industries, and even people who are triple, even I dance, I'm a dancer, and my dance teacher, his age is triple mine. But we are, we're like best friends. And also I had my very, very close friend who is a wonderful, wonderful woman. And she used to work, for the government and in the public sector. People would really see, respect. But we are just like friends. She also asked me, how would you like to you describe it? Would you describe it as you know, your even godmother, or yeah, like a friend? I say I would really very much prefer to say, well, friends. Even our age gap is like that large, and actually a lot of my dance crew, they are also almost double and also triple my age as well. And you know, when we talk about gender, it's also quite interesting, because gender, there are many categories as well. It's not just a female and male, and often we just assume it's a female and male. It's quite difficult to navigate. I didn't know. I think it's also about culture as well, because back in China, I'm from China, and I had no idea about the gender as well. So I just assumed it was a female and male. However, when I started to do a lot of work with communities, I also found out there are that people talk about non-binary and talk about the transgender, and often if we never met them or never ask, I think, you know, we kind of just get into the space to assume. I think that's another thing. We have so much assumptions, and that's all in our brain, and we just assume if this person looks like this, and then they must be. Yeah, and I also picked up a lot of things during work as well. In the beginning, I never understood why people had pronouns, and nobody actually explained why we had a pronoun. I never understood, but it's somehow just happening all the time. I was like, yeah, even you see here, I put my pronoun is she and her, because that's a way also to respect as well. And I've been starting to work with a lot of non-binary people, and they also some people prefer to call them they and them. It's quite challenging to change the mindset many times as well, because it's not in your culture and still in the process. But I could say sometimes people feel like, oh, sorry, but this kind of attitude didn't really, you know, you are apologizing, but at the same time, not apologetic as well. Just really, oh, sorry, that's not a thing. But then I learned it's actually quite important for them that they can see whether you are trying to respect, to pronounce, to call them they and them, or you are just treating this, oh, just something so casual. I think it's sometimes it's so easy for us to make all sorts of assumptions. Even sometimes people say, oh, are you Chinese? Or they say, oh, you are not like a Chinese, that kind of assumption as well. Or sometimes it's quite interesting why I cut my hair, where I have my long hair. And some people comment on my hair and say, oh, yeah, now you look much more like a female. And I was like, what do you mean by I look like a female? Because like when you have short hair, it doesn't take away your femininity as well. But people just say, you know, I would also say most of the time that was the males who would expect girls to have long hair, and that's the expectation, and to say, you know, I want you to be more feminine. I wanted to see the feminine side of you, and just that kind of expectation wanted to choose. But the thing is, did you ever ask me how I would feel, and you know, whether like, and also I don't think, you know, the hairstyle can kind of, you know, that's your identity. It's not, it's my choice. And I think I also started to realize a lot of people, you know, have short hair, have long hair, it doesn't matter. And for a lot of gender, talk about gender, and doesn't mean, you know, short hair and then they must be so masculine as well. I think there's things also about femininity and also masculinity as well. And sometimes people feel it's quite challenging to have a very honest talk, because that's not also for individuals. I think a lot of times it's structural as well, structurally, and also the pressure from the society, how we would look and how we would talk. And I think we came a long way as a female to expect to be housewife. When I'm cooking, and people would say, "Oh, you look much more like a female now." That kind of idea about housewife. So putting in a relationship, it's coming from a lot of culture context in the family set, coming from the Asian background, expect females to be at home, cook for the husband, and take care of the baby, but not expect you to go out and to have job even. I think there's a lot of things have already changed, but still we are fighting so hard to break down the perceptions and also stereotypes. And we can see a lot of us started to go out and to also work, and we have our identity as well. But often it's still quite challenging. And in Japan, I also know that a lot of husbands expect females to wake up early and to have makeup. And I was so shocked when I heard about the husbands never saw their wives without makeups. Never, ever. I was like, how could that happen? Because they say, yeah, because all the wives, they needed to wake up before their husband wake up at 5, and then always be pretty, always wearing the makeup. That's why we also say, if you want to see the true face of females, you need to go to the swimming pool. That's how you can see the true face. But then you can see there's a lot of expectations, and then inappropriate expectations on females as well. And the power dynamic as well. I think it's really interesting. If we look at the history, it's quite interesting because like a much long time ago, when females, we were actually more powerful because we pick up the fruit, and we became the powerful people in the family. However, afterwards, because we found out, men can kill animals and to hunt, and then they became more powerful. So it's quite interesting. You see the balance of equality shifted because of how people started to see who has the power to earn money to take care of the family. So I think talking about gender equality and the power dynamic, it's quite interesting. And a lot of times I found, especially when you were young, everything is already embedded in your culture and also embedded in your growth as well. If I didn't come to Australia and if I didn't open up to everything, it's very challenging to flip the mindset, because the mindset is something really difficult to change, but still it's possible to change as well. So let's see the future of that. I think it's about being open-minded and being receptive and to really listen deeply. And I think, what I'm always saying, what I'm always thinking is as a human, really just as a human, to communicate and try to understand. And it is okay if we don't understand as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Fei. Definitely some really interesting points. And I think your point about the shift in culture was something that was also brought up by our past speaker, who was also from the Chinese community, now together with men's session there. As someone who is also Chinese but born here in Australia, yes, I do think that there is a shift in gender and also the way that we see gender. So now I think that there is a change, particularly with the younger generation, where we acknowledge that there is transgender, there's also non-binary. But from the generation of our parents, because it was something that was never spoken about, it became something that was taboo. So like, now when we talk about people who are, they, them, or like, maybe that they identify as like non-binary, so no gender, or maybe they prefer, even if they look physically male, they might prefer to be called like she, her. I know for a fact that like, my parents would really struggle with that concept there. And I think it's important that we keep these conversations going there, because ultimately that plays a really important part of channeling the idea of what respect really is there. That respect has no like limitations. Like, we don't just see respect in terms of like male and female genders, but also extending to those who present as transgender, non-binary, or perhaps like, that they don't fit in with that stereotype of what a male should be like and what a female should be like. So I think definitely some really great points there. Does anybody have any questions for Fei? No? Great. Thanks, Elaine. So I will now move on to our next guest speaker, Nang. So Nang is currently joining us all the way from Laos. So thank you very much for being able to join us tonight there. Nang was also like, someone who is inspiring to lots and lots of young people. She was International Student of the Year last year in 2020, and has always been an advocate for human rights there and gender equality. This year, she again, organized the sexual health conference there for international students, and really focused on being able to bring that kind of information there about gender equity, sexual health, and also the support that is available for people, specifically for international students. So without further ado, I will introduce Nang to speak next there about gender equality. Thanks, Nang.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure, and I can feel the beautiful vibe and sort of close relationship that everybody have here. So I'm not sure what point to make, to be honest, today, because I feel like every speaker already make a lot of amazing ideas and put a lot of great wisdom and knowledge out there. Just a few things in my mind now. I think when it comes to respect, I think it can be individual and also collective things as well. But before we can define respect, I think, first of all, we need to respect for others. We need to define what respect means to us and how we respect ourselves first. Because in different culture, we all have different form of respect, right? For example, in Laos, if you wear your shoes into the house, it means very rude, disrespectful. But in Australia, you can wear your shoe into the house and it's okay. So I think defining what respect really means to us is important. And the most important thing is respect ourselves. For me, I think respect myself means giving up, especially the bad behavior that I know is not good for me. And when I do it, I feel guilty, and I still do it sometimes, but I know that it's bad for me. So if I give up those, then I respect myself. And I think another thing is, am I allow others to hurt me or cross my boundaries? For example, I sleep very early, so I don't really wanna respond to the phone. But if every time my friend texts me at 9 p.m. and I respond, that means I allow them to. So I can't blame them. I need to set very solid boundaries and demand the respect by not answering or communicate nicely to my friends or those who cross that boundaries and they don't necessarily know. So I need to communicate in a respectful manner to them. There are a lot of respect, what it means to respect ourselves out there. So it depends on our individual preference. And apart from respect ourselves, I think with respect, this I will talk in terms of romantic relationship, not with parents or others in the community. I think in a romantic relationship, it's very important to acknowledge that every individual have our own needs, and to fulfill that needs, it's very important, because otherwise the relationship will not last, and if it lasts, it won't be a happy, healthy relationship. So it's very important to know and acknowledge others people's needs and our needs and communicate them effectively. Like Chris said, communication is very important, clear, straight to the point. Don't do my reading. A lot of people do my reading. Like, I expect my partner to buy a gift for me, but when he asks, I say, it's okay, I need nothing. But I expect him to. But if he doesn't buy it, I get upset. And when I get upset, I get grumpy and angry. And then my partner will get pretty sad as well. So straight away communicate your needs, and also respect others' needs as well. And I think we also need to know the strength and weakness of ourselves and others, and their personal space as well. For example, for me in the morning, I love journaling and I love spending time alone. And I need to communicate that clearly. And for example, if my partner enjoy going to the gym, at that time, I need to respect his space, not putting schedule or, asking him to go to the market or get something for me. Just simple as that. Acknowledge the need and respects. And I think another thing is a healthy relationship and respectful relationship. It comes down to whether or not we both side, not one side, because relationship, it need to be both sides. Whether or not both partner or individuals can hold the safe space for each other vulnerability or pain, or we can call trauma. Everybody have trauma, every single one of us, including myself. But the level of the trauma may be different, the depth of it. So am I able to hold that space, safe space for my partner or not? Because all we need is understanding and someone to listen to us. So am I able to hold that for him, and can him hold that for me? So I think this is healthy and respectful relationship. Whether I can put my judgment aside and purely, listen to him and give him support when he needs, and at the same time, he can do it for me. So yeah, that is in the healthy relationship, in a romantic relationship. But if we talk about respect with family, especially our parents, it's quite tricky, because I am someone who come from Laos. I'm not sure if you know Laos. It's next to Thailand. So we have very conservative culture. Same as somebody asked Chris about whatever your parents said, you have to do it. Otherwise, it's going to upset them. So it's very hard to balance our needs and to satisfy their need at the same time, because after all, they are our parents. They raise us and we need to do them favors. So I think in terms of respect, for me with my parents, again, it's come to boundaries. My mom have very high expectation to me, especially with my partner, my husband. I'm single, but what she expect me to have certain kind of husband. She said that many times, but I think it's come down to communication. Again, like I communicate to her, not 1, 2, 3, but countless time of what kind of, like I would like to make my own decisions. It's not in a disrespectful way, but in a very kind, gentle way. At the same time, something that I can compromise with her. Like if she wants something that I can do it, not really affect my core values, then I am willing to do it. So I think it's very important if we can identify which one that we think is very important to us, and try to communicate in the way that not upsetting them, and do something that we can do, that we can compromise to make them happy. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's what I have been doing with my parents. And to be honest, like I love spending time with elderly. Genuinely love spending time with them. I think they have a lot of wisdom to share and a lot of great stories to tell that we can learn from them, that we cannot obtain from our friends who are like at the same age as us, because they have all that whole life experience. They make mistakes and they also succeed. So we learn from them. So I think respect them, spend time with them as much as we can is very important, because we need them and they need us. Research show in Harvard University, they conduct a research for 75 years, like what make life happy and live long life for people. And it showed us it's not fame, money, or hard work, but it's relationship, the bonding, how we feel connected and belong. So after all, we need each other. So respect each other is very important. Set that boundaries and communicate it effectively. At the same time, we need to respect each other's boundary, like we want them to respect ours as well. So I will end my talking and let others ask if you have questions or unsure. If not, it's all fine.
Thanks, Nang. And I think, what we're hearing from a lot of our speakers tonight there is really that it all starts with a simple conversation, and defining, well, what does that respect look like within our family, within our relationships there, whether that be with our parents, our siblings, our relatives, our community. And what I'm hearing, the most of is that, it's about listening, and the way that we communicate with individual people, our body language, the words that we choose, acknowledging that, gender is not something that is set in stone. People can have a fluid gender, whether they identify as they, them, he, her, she, him, and so forth there. So definitely, I think there's lots of great inspiration from all our speakers tonight there about not just respect for relationships there, but what respect looks like for young people and where they see the future of gender equality there, and how that plays a big part in respect there. So definitely, I think on behalf of everybody here on this panel there, definitely a round of applause to all our guest speakers tonight there. Thank you so much there, and we really appreciate having you here with us today there. So thanks, everybody. Thank you so much there. Does anybody have any questions for Nang? Yes, Chris.
Yeah, sure. I'll throw one out there. Again, yeah, thank you, Nang. And also Fei Fei as well. Thank you guys for your perspectives. It's really nice to hear different insights and different views all the time. So I wanted to ask Nang, when it comes to being from a very traditional background and working out, working through what matters to you and then expressing that to your parents, what have you found? What's maybe one or a few things that you found that helped you communicate things effectively? So you may see something one way or feel one way about one thing, but that the way it's worded in your head might not be the best way to deliver it. So how did you find the best way to deliver that to your parents or people around you?
Thanks, Chris. That's such a great question, because I quit medical school and I make everybody upset, especially my mom. But I think that is the greatest experience I ever have in my life. So I be able to sort of disconnect with my family and reflect on my relationship with them, each individual. So first of all, I need to understand myself. For example, what I understand myself is I can't communicate effectively or in a respectful manner if I get upset or angry, or if I have any kind of very intense emotion. So I need to digest the problem and issue first, journaling, do everything I can to make it clear to me. Then I know what I need. I know what choice I need to take. Then it's come to, I need to learn every single individual. How can I effectively communicate with them? For example, with my brother, I know he needs compliment. It's not like I compliment him all the time. It's not that like fake compliment, but just notice what he did good and compliment. And I can communicate effectively when he did something amazing and I say it, and then he listened to me. With my mom, I need to communicate with her just one-on-one, and usually at night when I have very close sort of an intimate conversation with her. So it comes down to knowledge, like insight of each individual. We need to learn and observe when it's the right time to speak to them and grab that opportunity and communicate directly. I think that, hope that answer your question, Chris.
No, that's fantastic. I love how you mentioned that everyone's different in how they receive information. I think that's something that I definitely forget, and maybe others forget as well. That's really important to realize. Each person, yeah, they definitely receive things differently. So understanding what works for them is really important. Thanks. That's good.
Can I add in something to Chris's question?
Sure.
No? Apollo is my name.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you for Chris to instigate something that touches me on something. Sometimes now, there are cultural behaviors some people call cultural violence. There are a few of them. Some of them are simply described so when they are not. Others are because of the type of person describing it. For example, I come from Uganda. Generally, there is a symbol of either hugging or bending a little bit your legs or kneeling down as a form of respect. But because it's more emphasized sometimes with younger females, that does not mean that the males don't do this type of respective behaviors. They tend to be advertised in the form of cultural violence, and then they are taught different. I'm wondering within the Lao community and where you've grown, you've come across those sort of things. I mean, I'm not asking you to comment on Uganda anyways because you don't know, but I'm talking about those sort of things that would be classified as cultural violence and how to deal with them. I'm following on Chris's point of the way the individuals actually navigate to deal with those dilemmas.
Thanks for the questions. I'm not sure if I get it right. Please, everybody, I will need to paraphrase that. And if I get it wrong, let me know. So your question
go for it.
is, yep. Your questions is
there are like characteristics of behaviors classified as cultural violence. Some of them are real, some of them are made up for defensive reasons.
I think,
how do we navigate those sort of things when we are younger people and trying to do the right thing?
Yeah, that's a big question actually. So there are a lot of actions or culture in my country that I disagree with. I really do. I disagree with. For example, like it's come to education. We are a developing country. You know, a lot of family, they expect female to stay at home and not go to study and prioritize education to boys or men first. And that's what I really, it's not something that I really like. So if you ask me what is something that considers inequality, I think that would be one thing. And I think another thing is about sexual harassment. Yeah, sexual harassment, especially in the past. Not like when I say past, when I was like 16, 13, and it's still happening in sort of rural area. You know, when men go to villages or something, when they can sort, I don't know how to say, but it's hard. I don't want to say that rape or something, but it's sort of not really sort of consent or kind of thing. Like it's sort of force and something along those lines, and it's considered acceptable. And it's not that officially considered acceptable, but women, they think that they don't have the right to defend themselves. They don't even know that they have the right to say no, you know. And I think that it's very hurtful to know. So it's hard because it's not everybody know about equality. It's hard to raise awareness because it's culture. But I always tell myself that if I don't really stand up or raise awareness or do something, then who will? Because everybody just do what they know. I assume that they do their best, because if they know better, they will do better. They don't know. They don't access education. I don't blame them, but so what I can do is educate them and raise awareness. I know it will be hard, but if I don't do it, I will need to rely on someone. And who is that person?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely, Nang. Like, you know, I think, you know, I can speak about like, you know, my background there. And I think like, you know, Chris was also asked this question there. Sometimes like, you know, when you are of an ethnic background and your parents migrate, then there is a push-pull factor. So like, you know, when your parents migrate there, they have all these kinds of ambitions and dreams and goals for you. But they don't communicate that to you there. You know, they will just communicate to you when you decide that, like, you know, you've done, like, you've chosen a particular course, for example, there that doesn't sort of suit what they have envisioned for you. So, like, you know, in my own story, you know, my parents would definitely have expected me, like Nang, to pursue an education that is somewhat considered to be safe. So like, you know, the medical profession, accounting, business, and so forth there. Community work is great there, but only when it's local. So when I told my parents, by the way, I'm going to Kenya and I'm going to stay there for 6 months, they were absolutely horrified because I was female, I was young, and I didn't really have a plan, and I didn't even really know where I was staying. So to them, it was like, oh my gosh, you know, how can she go and so forth there? And many of my relatives, even still to this day there, they'll still talk about that one that was really crazy and went off to Kenya and still goes there. And we don't know why she does that. You know, it's something that is so taboo there that needs to be normalized. And like Nang was saying, these conversations are really around the opportunity to educate, not just like, you know, friends, family, but also like our elders, to say that, well, you know, your understanding of gender and so forth there, it's not that like, you know, you intend us harm, but things are changing. You know, we are independent there, we have our own thoughts, and we will sort of like, you know, as Chris said, sometimes if you tell us to go left, we will go right. But that's not because we're disrespecting you there. That is because we are following our own paths there and things that you have instilled with us there. So I think, Apollo, you raised a really good question, and so did like Marie-Louise there, for particularly, I think, relevant for young people who are born here in Australia there, but still identify with their ethnic background. So I think, Apollo, like, was a really good question, and I really thank Chris and Nang for, like, you know, being able to really talk about it there and sort of say, okay, well, yes, like, you know, this is some of the challenges, but this is how I navigate that space. Does anybody have any other questions for Nang or Feifei?
Feedback.
Sorry, Teresa.
Just feedback. I mean,
feedback. Yes, please. Feedback is always welcome.
I think the educating the people, but also not in a forceful way, but in a more of a positive communication of, especially, I mean, we or the generation who have migrated here and we grew up. Say, like, I put example of myself in a country, in the village, and you have different values and different way of even respect. And then when you come here and you have the children here, sometimes we forget that we are in a different area, country. So it is not only educating the young people, even we parents, we need sometimes to be reminded, to reflect, and to be. We are in a transition of learning and changing, and to be able to have the capacity to listen to our children or even the youth we work with the respect and share their views without fear of being outcasted, but to be like friends. And I think that's what all the Chris and all that people talked about, family relationship. We should be friends within the family, where you feel free to share if you have hardship, or if you feel that the course is not going right, or that's not what you feel you don't want to do. And if you communicated in a positive, respectful way, people listen. And even sometimes I have made mistakes and I say, oh, I was wrong. Maybe my daughter was right.
Yes.
she decided to migrate and gonna live in Canada. And here I am. And the first time she went, was up in arms because she went as a study just after university. And she said, oh, I'm going to America. And they said, whom do you know in America? And to my surprise, she got back to me and said, you can't go by yourself. You don't know anybody. You are a black girl, young. And you know what she said to me? But politely said, Mom, when you came to Australia, which I came alone, single, a black woman, and you survived. Also, I will survive. And I just let go. Now she has been there for 5 years. So it is the way how you communicate. And that's what matters, sort of respectful communication and the openness and the trust within each other. Yeah.
Exactly, and definitely, like well said, Teresa. And I think it's nice to hear elders sort of like reflecting on their respectful relationships between young people. There was a question, Davis, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to actually top up on what Teresa is saying about cultures changing. When people, for example, immigrate from different cultures and come to Australia, there are some parents that are at crossroads. Some parents will say, I'm staying with my Ugandan culture. Or one of the parents are saying my Ugandan culture. Others will say, I'll take the good part of Ugandan culture and take the good part of Australian culture. Others will say, I'll leave everything there and also go to Australian culture. Others will say, I don't want Australian culture. I don't want Ugandan culture. I'm creating my own culture. So these crossroads also have an impact on the youth, on how we communicate. Because first of all, the parents alone might be having different cultures, which actually causes a clash, and that causes more problems. So us also identifying and doing a self-realization to know at what point we are would put us in a better position in which how to engage with the youth.
Yeah,
on those issues. Yeah, thank you.
Well said, and like a really, really good point there, Davis. And I think sometimes, as young people, we often reach this like crossroad, and then sometimes we might identify as one particular culture, and then our parents identify as another particular culture. And then we become at crossroads there because our parents are saying, oh, we want you to be like this. And then you are influenced by your peers, by your work, by your own personal experience. And then you're saying, but no, this is not really part of my identity. This is part of my identity. So I think, again, what Teresa is saying is coming to reflect back and, having that respect for one another and having those open dialogues and open conversation and being honest and being able to change that narrative, such important things there. And I think definitely that the underpinnings of respect and respectful conversations, not just in young people, but with everybody. Were there any further questions or feedback, I should say? No? Yes, Sylvia.
I just wanted to tag on what Davis was just saying. Not only is the crossroads happening at home, can you imagine the crossroads is actually happening in schools? Because here we are, there's no, I don't know if there's many or any cultural liaison officers in the multi-diverse parts of all the different schools, especially if you talk about Dandenong, city of Greater Dandenong, the city of Casey. Can you imagine all these different cultures being thrust to learn Australian culture, to appreciate Aboriginal culture? They get crammed all that knowledge, then they got to go home and then learn their own culture from parents that have been most likely brought up in their own, from back home. And imagine this individual, this youth, every day having to go through that conflicting crosswords. And, I just hope the government, the state government and the Department of Education is actually, doing something or strategies to ensure how they're going to combat that cross culture that's happening in schools everywhere in Victoria and Australia.
Definitely, such important points, and hopefully that this recording will reach far and wide and hear those that need to think about changing the way that we talk about respect in schools and acknowledging the intersections and interculture that plays such an important part there within across all generations. So definitely some good things raised there, Sylvia. Anybody else have any final words?
I conscious of time, but I just would like to make just one point to explain what you said. I think I do agree with Sylvia, cross culture, it's very important to us. And for my own experience, when I come to Australia, I actually know more about my culture in a different perspective. Because when I am in there, for example, I'm in the city, I only see building, but when I raise above it, then I can see where everything is. I think it's important to go outside and look back. So what I would like to put the final word in there is, when we would as a young person, when I would like to make my own decision upon my life, especially my future, I do take advice, but I don't want my parents to dictate their thought over me, because I would like them to know that whatever decision that I make is for my best life. And if I have my best life, they will be happy and I will support them. If I don't live my best life, then I won't be happy and I won't be able to help them or support my parents. And I know their greatest desire is for me to be happy. So everything I do is for me and for my family. So that's what I would like to say.
No, thank you so much, Nang, for sharing that there. And I think definitely the sentiment is very much shared across, not just the younger generations represented here today there, but with everybody there. So thank you so much, everybody. Teresa, did you get in touch with Tahir?
No, I think we reserve him for next time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but he would have been great to share his experience, because he did the course with the family strengthening with the African community, and he was a very active youth and what he learned about respect and family. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure we can add him there, and we will talk about that at another point in time there. But thank you everybody for coming today. Don't forget our next and last session will be together with women next Sunday. Check out and look out for our flyer on all our social media sites there. And I wish you all a good night and stay safe. Thank you.
And we would like everybody to participate again. It's not only for women, it's for everybody. And you young people, please join us.
Sarah, are you doing a picture? Because we usually use it as for a thumbnail. Yep.
I can do a picture. If the people who don't have their cameras on, if they want to be included in the picture, can you turn your camera on now? All right, so on the count of 3, I will take the picture. Everybody ready? Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everybody.
Only one? What about if it's not good?
I will sit with you individually and take many, many, many photos until you're happy. I'm sure it's fine. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.